Just fucking do it. Subscribe now.
The world is engaged in self-sabotaging activity, and they can't help themselves. My sweetheart, Sweet Pea. You don't want to know the fucking truth. It's an awful thing to say, but South Africa was better off with apartheid. Now, I'm one of the few people that will say that. I thought when Bill slapped the little shit on the Oscars. What's his name? I'm the only guy in America that said it was a good thing he slapped him. If I slapped a little cocksucker, he'd be in the hospital. Because that's how I was raised. You fuck with my woman, you're a dead man. The guy is 6'2", 225, and the little shit's 135, and he can't even knock him on the ground. And Smith is supposed to be a tough actor. Fuck. And that's why it's so easy for us. Because there are bigger cunts than you. Hard to believe. There are bigger cunts, and you're going to have a script. And it took her 200 times because she was nervous. And then I get one guy that does it the first time. He's, I'm going to wait till I get a better deal. And then 31 months later, if they say yes, it's like, guys, I know nobody gets their dick wet anymore, but anyway, when she says yes, your place or mine, just trust me. Say okay, just let her take you by the hand and take wherever she's going to take you. Might be the only time you ever get your dick wet. That's so dehumanizing for me to even think of, considering my life as a single guy. Fuck. But Tony and I are not close. The last time I saw Tony, anyway, I don't want to say, that's not important. But he's changed millions of lives. That's for goddamn sure. He's changed infinitely more lives than I have. That's the fucking truth. Okay. We've got to the bank, the money, and then you repeat. Repeat, repeat, repeat. And the second and third and fifth and 50th and 80th and 300th and 500th time that you do it, you'll get better, better, and better. The challenge is not giving up before you get better, better, and better. That's the challenge. There's a reason why in price fighting, they start with your manager puts you up with somebody he knows you're going to beat up. And your first 4 or 5 or 6 or 8 fights, you know. And then you're up to the next level. And that's why they don't give championship fights to rookies very often. Because everybody's built their economic model on so many fights. This model, the first deal you're going to do is going to be between $750 and $1,250,000. The next deal you're going to do is between $1,250 and $1,750. And by the time you do 8 or 10 deals, you've built out $4, $5, $6 million to your account. To your account. You're 2/3. You're 62%. And yes, we do have guys that go after elephants and dinosaurs in the beginning. Not too many successful. Tomorrow you're going to talk to, right now, my leading dinosaur killer, Simon the Bell. And spends $30,000 for dinner. And we're not talking about 800 people. 8 people. Lives large. Lives like King Farouk. At the one end. And then we got Minnie Mouse like you at the other end. He doesn't think white wine has, he doesn't think white wine has calories. It's only red wine. I've seen him drink a case of champagne by himself. People in this room can't even afford a fucking case of champagne, let alone drink it. There is another world. It's like an alternative world. If you can't see yourself riding that fucking backward bike, visual, I guarantee you're not going to be riding any fucking backward bike. Because your subconscious doesn't know you're full of shit. Fortunately. And the good news is, and maybe it's not Corona why we've doubled our closing ratio. Maybe it's because we have so many success stories. At the end of the week, I'm going to ask you which one you related to. And we had a little Dutch Vietnamese girl that sat right over there where that blonde guy sitting. And we're going through, and how many thought they were like this, and how many, and she says, well, I think I'm like Steve Jobs. They say I leaped off of this podium running around the choker. How fucking delusional. And I stood where the guy with the yellow tie is, over where the blonde guy is. And I said, Dan, if you hit her, Dan, it's gonna be trouble. I mean, if you put your hand, Dan, it's gonna be trouble. But they say I busted a blood vessel. She thought she was like Steve Jobs. Jesus Christ Almighty. That's where we are. It's beyond delusional. I don't know what a word that's beyond delusional, but fuck. How can you be that sick? There's not one trait in this room that's like Steve Jobs. Outside of me. He was a stone fuck. He could have been a CIA hitman like my dad. And they're almost all the same. So, I've had guys take acting lessons. Method to learn how to act like they had a pair. And you aside, if you don't have somebody on the board that's got a pair, no matter how many fucking transactions they had, you're dead fucking meat. You might as well give your soul to Allah because your ass is theirs. Because I guarantee you, some of these sellers are assassins, pretending to be 75-year-old retirees. But it's a numbers game. One of the biggest errors you kids make is you spend too much time. Remember, you've all heard I spent 7 months, 9 months, and you don't understand how that's possible. Because you're desperate to do something. To be able to go back and tell your wife, I didn't waste the money. Better, I haven't produced 5 hammer closers in 29 years. Closers like me. Hammer. I've produced 4 or 5. And they're all super successful. I've only got a couple up there. The other pictures I can't show. But you're certainly not going to be wasting any time. One of the great stories, not a story, the greatest salesman that I tell you about, sitting in a limo and the greatest salesman asking, he says, I can stand here on 5th and Madison and I'll ask a couple hundred girls and somebody will fuck me right here on the street. Did I tell you that yet? Okay. Walter, I'm sitting in his limo, drinking champagne. He gets out in a sable coat, sable. $50,000 coat. This is 30 years ago. And he's asking girls to fuck him as they walk down the street. He got spit on, slapped, kicked in the balls 2 or 3 times. Not knocked down, knocked off balance. And the 17th woman As soon as she went like this to look at her watch, I knew he had her. And she said, and I rolled down the window, yeah, I got a couple hours, your place or mine? Did God strike my grandchildren dead if that's not true? He escorts her to the car, looking fairly happy. She's looking happy, and they open the back door of the limo, and she looks in at me and says, fuck, I haven't done a menage a trois. We're going to have some real fun, aren't we, boys? See, that's a world you don't know anything about. That's a world that you have wet dreams about. There's an alternative world out there. And we weren't drug-induced. Walter didn't drink, smoke, take drugs. I drank, didn't smoke, took no drugs. God knows she didn't need drugs. That's a world you can't even imagine. Life is a numbers game. There's a slide that I skipped, has 1,200, 1,500, 1,800, 3 superstars. Took 1,200 to be a millionaire, 1,500 calls and be a millionaire, and 1,800 calls to be a millionaire. And you know who the 1,800 calls was? Bruce the Whipple. And now we're down to 400 or 500 calls for the best ones. But nobody does it in 3 calls. So you don't even want to make 1,200 calls. And if you don't want to make 1,200 calls now, you're certainly not going to want to make 1,200 calls in a week. And I would be disingenuous if I told you. But if you do decide to make, a minimum of 1,200 calls, it's easy. All you got to do is follow the steps, as every single person so far has told you, and to follow the scripts, which may or may not make sense to you, but it doesn't make a shit whether they make sense to you. The only differentiation is for those of you that are going to use it in a different language other than English. There's, plus or minus 10 or 15%, you have to make some changes. In a couple of languages, Russian, everything doesn't translate 100%. I'm told in Mandarin, everything doesn't translate 100%. I'm told in Korean, everything doesn't translate 100%. But it's worked in all those places. They just modify. And remember, you have to do what works for you, not what has worked for Peter or for me. And Peter told you as of, yesterday. And you're going to see Peter's first webinar, not the second webinar, but the first webinar when he's up there talking about I'm just a Hungarian Forrest Gump, to see the difference, not just his presence. His presence. And we have kids that have done it sooner, and we certainly have a number of kids that have taken longer. But as he said at the end, if you're going to try this, don't bother. If you're just going to try, don't bother. It's if you can't see yourself, visualize yourself on that backward bicycle, knowing that your subconscious is full of shit, then you've got a problem. Who's my 530? 6. 630. Hungarian 2. Okay. Forrest Gump 2. Any questions about anything? Okay, I'll see my 5:30 in 20 minutes or so. And then dinner tonight, I think. In there? Okay. We're going to eat like in a mess hall or boarding school, most of which you didn't go to, but anyway, or a mess hall is the closest. Do they still have mess halls? You sit together? A galley. So the mess hall is for officers? Okay. 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 We'll see you later, kids. Thank you.